Sensical Politics, where common sense meets politics. I'm Tyler, and today I'm joined by two co-hosts,
Spencer Sembrat
and Jeremy Holt.
And today we've got a few interesting things to talk about. The first thing on the list I'm rather excited to talk about. In the news today, or I guess the past week, CNN has pretty much tracked down and hunted down this Reddit user for posting a meme that they declared to be against them. And they threatened to dox him, pretty much reveal all of his information. So we're going to be giving our take on that and how CNN as a news source as a whole is going down the drain. The second thing we're going to be talking about is public education and does someone have a right to go to college? This was something that Bernie Sanders sort of ran on, raising taxes to allow for more public education. Then we're going to be discussing universal income and how that's going to play a role in the future of automation with 3D printing, with robots, AI, all those sort of stuff. And then last, we're going to be talking about de facto segregation. So, are people just segregated due to societal rules that are unseen, or is it more of their choice? How it all works together. So to start off, about the CNN meme hunt. This is pretty.
What was the meme?
Well,
the
reason why this whole thing started was because Donald Trump, our lovely president, is real at real Donald Trump account, tweeted in the morning, I believe, a GIF of him, I believe, body slamming CNN in a WWE wrestling GIF. That's what started this whole thing. And CNN then proceeded to find the, quote, source of this GIF, track this man down, and effectively reveal his location. So, Spencer?
What they then proceeded to do is essentially blackmail this creator of this GIF. Pretty much what they said was, I'm trying to find the exact thing, the quote. They said, if you don't apologize for doing this, then we will essentially release all of your public information, address, phone number, social media, place of work, all that stuff, to the public, which is very illegal. It's also called doxing. So here's the exact quote from CNN. So CNN is not publishing the Reddit's name is, the Reddit user's name is Han, an asshole solo, because he is so they're not publishing his name because he is a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying he has taken down all of his offending posts, and because he has said he is not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. CNN then gives themselves the right, I quote, CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change. So they're essentially holding this guy ransom and blackmailing him, saying if you ever create a GIF like this again, a meme, keep in mind it's a meme about CNN and fake wrestling, then they are going to release his public information. What CNN... that article should have ended. It should have gone, CNN is not publishing this Reddit user's name because he is a private citizen. Period. There should be nothing after that. It should not read, who has issued an extensive statement of apology and has promised not to repeat this ugly behavior. It just goes to show the complete moronic state that CNN entitles themselves to, thinking that they have control over Reddit users creating memes about them. And then... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when I first read it in the news, I was astonished. I could not believe my eyes. CNN was pretty much saying that they are the arbiters of what is right and what is wrong. They are the law, and if you do not obey what they like, then your private information is going to be published, which in a way is threatening, because when your public information is released, there are stories, tons of them, about people who were doxxed and then someone came to their house or delivered something to your, like threatening letter to their house, and they were either forced to move or they just had to deal with it. It's absolutely ridiculous that CNN is literally threatening a Reddit user about a meme. It's ridiculous what the world's come to.
And CNN even fails at trying to hunt down the meme creator because
it's funny about that. I'm gonna take that from you, Spencer.
Yeah.
Because first, people think that it's this 15-year-old. All right, it's this guy who's not even an adult that they find, who's this meme creator that they are blackmailing, and then there are stories that it's actually an adult, someone who's over 18, and now it's not even the guy that created the meme in question.
Allegedly, I'm not sure who's confirmed this, but I've seen
no
this
one
multiple
knows
places.
What's happening is what the point is.
At the moment, the recent thing I've said is it's a guy in Mexico who is encouraging CNN to try to dox him, and he claims that he runs his own business and he lives alone, so if he was doxed, it wouldn't matter. It just, like, as soon as citizens of the United States and foreign people have to say, really, CNN, really, you're gonna dox me? All right, go ahead and do it. See, I'm not apologizing for a WWE tweet. What? It just shows, and also CNN's in desperate mode. They live in a little bubble, and everyone they talk to agrees with them. They think Donald Trump is the worst person to ever walk the earth, and it is their moral obligation to take him down. And whether that be exaggerating Russian scandals, whether that talk about prostitutes peeing on Donald Trump, or I guess when they're really trying hard and they're running low on stuff, they'll attack Donald Trump as someone who's inciting violence against Democrats by tweeting a fake wrestling meme with the CNN logo. It's ridiculous. It's almost comedic. Like, no one, like, it's almost like a comedy show, except it's our country and our president, so it's a little more depressing.
Yeah,
CNN's going down the drain.
Yep.
Yeah, CNN is going down the drain, though.
Enough about CNN. I'm sure they will give us more content tomorrow. Maybe imagine if they apologize for blackmailing a little.
Come on, they're not gonna do that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that would break the internet. Like, actually,
that would truly be something.
I think that goes against the law of physics. Didn't Einstein or something say CNN cannot apologize, or else the black hole forms and we all die?
The fourth law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. All right, moving on. Public education. Jeremy, what's your take on this?
Yeah, so in regards to public education in America, we all have been subject to this in recent times. Our own public education. I'm sure you guys go to public schools.
Yes.
Or have gone. I wouldn't really describe them in such a way that would preclude me agreeing with their status. And I'm sure you wouldn't really say that it was a shiny beacon across the world, something that people would want to emulate.
Right.
It turns out that over the course of the years, there's been more and more spending in education, both at state levels, local levels, and at the federal level. And people just appear to be going into less and less lucrative fields. And this really has a lot to do with several facets. One is the unionization of teachers in such a way that you can't get rid of bad teachers. And good teachers who go beyond the pale, are punished by not being able to get a higher pay than everybody else, not being able to fire specific teachers who aren't bad but who actually do illegal things.
Mm-hmm.
Is a real big problem with public education, which leads into the bigger problem in college education, because all of these kids are going into college without any sort of skill or motive in mind, and then they waste their time, and then everyone complains that college is really, really expensive.
And they can't get a job.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so they complain it's really, really expensive whenever they weren't properly prepared, and they're going into some fields in college that do not set them up for success.
Yes, fields such as the social sciences or especially the arts.
Yeah.
Those fields aren't fields that yield enough income to be able to pay back the massive amount of debt that you incur while you're going into college. Because now we've gone into this state where college is sort of like healthcare in America. It's in this spiral of infinite amounts of money you have to spend to be able to receive it.
Right.
A lot of it is because it's guaranteed by the government. The government guarantees your loans. So
Yeah.
a college is no longer obligated to provide you with a quality education and afterwards a quality job.
And then at the
well-
same time, it's like you said, the same with healthcare. It's the government that started this spiral. If the government let the colleges compete, that would drive prices down and create better content and quality teaching for these students.
Well, yes, it's not really about competition in colleges per se. It's more about the fact that a college is guaranteed to get that money that you're going to spend in. They already have the money by the time you're walking into their doors. So they have no real obligation to give you anything besides making sure that you get the service sort of that you asked for, because you're paying back banks, you're paying back federal banks. So like,
Which kind of leads into the question: does everyone have a right to go to college? Do you think?
everyone has a right to be able to go to college. Nobody has the right to demand of others their ability to go to college. Is what it comes down to, because there are going to be individuals in this country that will not go to college. They're going to go to a trade school, or better yet, they're just going to start a business in the ever shrinking series of businesses that you aren't required to get some sort of degree in.
Mm-hmm.
So you if you guarantee college for everybody, then you're going to do a couple things. You're going to screw over the people who are going to be paying into a system they will never benefit from, especially everyone who's already graduated from college.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do about those individuals? That's another question. And then there's also the issue of the government inflating the cost of these jobs. So now that everybody has a college degree, what's going to happen now is now McDonald's going to require you having a college degree because everyone is going to get one.
So it doesn't mean anything really.
Yeah, it becomes meaningless. So an undergraduate degree means nothing. And so all jobs are going to require you to have either more experience or require you to get a master's or a doctorate in these fields, which incurs more debt, and then people are going to complain about that and require the government to subsidize that even more until everyone.
Just to play devil's advocate, what would we say to people that genuinely can't afford to go to college? Is it to work hard in school so you get scholarships and stuff like that, or what if their family just can't afford it? You still believe that it's not their right to demand money from other people.
You can't demand anything of other people. You can certainly be a charitable person if you are in a good state of income and mind. There's nothing against that. In fact, it's encouraged to be somebody who gives back to your community, either giving out scholarships or helping out individuals who are in sort of a less of a state of privilege than you may be in.
Mm-hmm. It's actually interesting. This is old news, but New York was the first state to create free college, and obviously that's paid through with taxes. But
forcing those people.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an interesting disclaimer that in order to not be charged for your college in New York, college tuition, you have to remain living and employed in the state of New York for 10 years after you graduate, which is, I find interesting that they put that in, because they realize people are going to get their degree in New York for free and then they're just going to go work somewhere else, and they need that skill to be included in New York. And I just fear that if everyone if all states follow after that, then it's almost like we're not really even states anymore if we can't leave the state for fear of having to pay for college tuition.
Yeah.
I mean, but okay, so to try and speak the other, like, I'm not really going to speak the other side here because I'm going to rebuke it in a second. But you do bring up a point. You do bring up a point that that could be made for public education or better public education, even to higher level education, is that you just said it right. The talent that comes from working, from educating more and more of the workforce, could be a sort of like payback for spending money on these people. I mean, why do we pay for public education in the first place? It's to educate the general populace and to add more skill to the workforce. The only thing I'll say about that is there are a lot of studies and polls that have just shown that that right now our society has an overinflated sense of who needs to go to college. Right now, I believe it's about 2/3 of high school graduates go on to college, and then the 1/3 either start a business or they stay at home or
Go into a trade.
A trade school, exactly. And there's a lot of studies that have shown that that a lot of people who are going to college don't actually need to go to college to make a decent amount of money. If they go to a trade school, they can come out with a lot less debt, and they can be making a lot of money, and it takes less time too. So there's a lot of evidence for that. So I would say that college, so sort of like rebuke the idea of why don't we pay for college? It'll make everyone better educated. Is that there's a lot of evidence that shows that we don't actually need that higher level of education for everyone to be educated at that level. Mm-hmm. And then also going into another point, because you guys were talking for a while, so there are a few things I wanted to address. So there's also a study that showed that it was rather interesting. The more money the government spent on financial aid for college, the more expensive college became. That's just a study that they did that I thought was quite interesting.
That's why college is so expensive.
Yeah,
exactly.
The more
and
that they
the
increase the state or federal grants, the more they increase the federal and state grants and subsidization, the bigger it kept going, because the colleges were like, all right, well, if people will be able to pay more out of pocket, then just keep going up and up and up. Yeah. There's no there's no set place that they have to stop. The government hasn't implemented that, so.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And then the last thing I just want to say is that, again, going back to the idea of not everyone needs to go to college, you could point out hundreds of extremely successful artists. And I want to make the point for artists here and for people not the humanities, but mostly artists, because a lot of people expect that when they go to college to study art, that they'll come out and they'll be like this amazing art master, even if they, they aren't born with a natural skill for it. And there are a lot of artists out there, hundreds if not thousands of artists that did not go to high school or did not go to college, or some I'm sure didn't even go to high school, and they are very successful. The thing is that college can only teach you so much. You can't go into college, especially for something like an art, and then expect to come out being like a professional. It's just, say it again. And the cost. Yeah.
I was just saying you can't come out.
Oh, Picasso. You said Picasso. Yeah, and the cost.
The problem with the arts, I mean, there's so many of the arts that are now digital. So like photography, people who are on Instagram can make a lot more money and don't have to go to college. Yeah. It's something that you can learn. A lot of the sort of humanity-like arts are things that a college can't really teach, and it's useless for you to go to college for. There are things that are technical arts that people can go to college for, like graphic design. That's a technical art. That's something that you might need certain skills at to be able to do, although, again, something that you can be self-taught. But other things like painting and photography are things that you can't go to college for, because that is a losing battle, especially if you're going to spend upwards of $5,000-$10,000 a year on it.
Yeah. It's just, and I mean, I don't really. It's easy to blame the colleges and say they're greedy, but I tend to blame the government more because of their irresponsible lending of and socialistic idea of how money is supposed to go around.
Well, it's both of them, because right now in the state of our colleges right now, with the courses that they offer, if we were ever going to subsidize the colleges that much, they have to clean up their situation first and foremost. That would have to happen.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, that does kind of like take us into like the next topic that we're going to talk about. Like what if someone does want to take a job that is sort of more low paying, but it's very rewarding to them? Someone who's like an artist, I mean, maybe they probably go in expecting, hey, I'm not going to get paid that much to do this. I mean, some of them might be slightly delusional, or some of them could be successful. It's possible. But a majority of them are not going to get as a high-paying job as a surgeon or a computer programmer or an engineer of any sorts. It's just how the world works. So it does bring up the idea is in this future of like automation and robotics and artificial intelligence, is the universal income. Should everyone be paid a certain amount of money, whether it be at the beginning of the year and you have the rest of the year to last, and you can also make money on top of that, or monthly or weekly, however you'd like to do it, but universal income in the fact that everyone gets paid a certain amount of money at the beginning of throughout the year.
Mark Zuckerberg,
so what are your thoughts on this, Jeremy?
I'll let Spencer go, because Spencer just had something to bring in.
Sorry,
Mark Zuckerberg
Spencer, go ahead.
Was advocating for this, and one of his points. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Mark Zuckerberg, because he founder of Facebook. He's a genius when it comes to tech, but I feel like just because you're a genius in tech does not mean you understand, I don't know, economics or things outside your field. He may know a lot about it, but it just seems slightly moronic, because he claims that having a universal income would encourage more people and families to be innovative whenever you don't have to focus so much on your 9-to-5 job to put dinner on the table for your kids and your wife. Having a universal income would take that burden of the necessities off your shoulders and give you more chance to start that small business you always wanted to create it, or do anything like that. I don't have any statistics to back this up, just because I haven't researched it enough, but just logically, giving people money almost seems like that encourages them not to work for more money, and that would.
Well, this is the exact thing that socialism addresses. Whenever the idea was founded during the Industrial Revolution, that people they have to be able to during automation and during this massive amount of job growth. Not only that, but there's... I actually lost my train of thought there. But the foundations of socialism, there we go. The foundations of socialism is that everyone has to be able to do what they want to do. To every man their... I'm actually losing all of my trains of thought. Give me a second here.
That's all right. Socialism's pretty retarded, so it's hard to keep it all intact.
If you'd like, I could step in while you collect your thoughts real quick.
I just tried to get like the Marx quote, like to every man their to each and every man their meat, or whatever that one. But
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The idea of socialism is that if you have everything that you need, if you have healthcare, if you have education, if you're able to be placed wherever you need to be able to be placed, wherever the government needs you to be, then everyone will be able to live fine and peacefully. There will be innovation somehow, and life will be good. The problem is, whenever that's implemented, that seems to not be the case.
Yeah, what encourages innovation if you already don't have... I mean, it sounds bad to say the pressure of eating, but like that's what encourages... You work hard so that you can provide for yourself and your family. If your family is provided for, what's going to encourage the progression of inventions and stuff?
Yeah.
If I could step in here, it's
okay. Yes.
It's sorry. It's kind of interesting, Spencer, that you bring up the idea of they believe that or Zuckerberg says that if you're paid a universal income and you don't need to focus on your 9-to-5 job as much, that you're more likely to innovate. But it's rather interesting because Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations, at least part of the earlier on parts of his book, he says pretty much the exact opposite. He talks about how some of the greatest innovations in the manufacturing field at that time were because of the division of labor, because someone's job was only this one thing over and over and over again, only this one job that they could focus on for hours a day. They were more likely to innovate because that would require them either having less work, more time, more free time. He gives an example of how in the when fire trucks were around, there's this young boy, or a boy of any age, who had to whenever the steam was rising, he had to pull this lever to make sure that the piston would actually go off in time. But what he noticed is, because he had to do this for multiple hours every day, what he noticed is that the piston is in time with when the steam needs to be released. And he noticed that if you attach a string between the two, it does his job for him and it automates him and it gives him more time to play with his friends. That's how Adam Smith put it. And it's a great, I mean, at least back in that day, it was one of the greatest innovations for that machine at the time. So I would argue, at least against Zuckerberg here, is that when you focus on your job, you do wind up innovating a bit more. At least, that's how Adam Smith believes.
That's an interesting take.
Well, yeah. Whenever you have to work for what you need, people will change the world. Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton. People, whenever they have the ability to and find what their interests are in and are able to make money and back this thing up, they'll be able to do it. If you look at countries that have endured socialism or communism, as they might like to call it, whatever ideology they've assigned it to, Bolivarianism, place like Cuba, they're still driving cars from the 1950s.
Right.
If you fly over, if you use a satellite even, you can see that they're stuck whenever they revolted or whenever Castro came in on a boat and took over the country.
Right.
So they just aren't able to upgrade their technology.
Right, and that is also due to no innovation, but also because the government doesn't almost allow innovation. Private businesses aren't really a thing in Cuba specifically. Everything is government run, so there's no one to
compete with.
Right, even if you went out and created this awesome, invention that could, something in Cuba, the government takes control of it and you no longer benefit from your invention. There's no incentive. And that's the beauty of competition. Competition just speeds up creation so much.
Yeah, and then people point to the Soviet Union and they say, well, they were able to innovate in such ways. Well, there was a global competition called the Cold War.
Right.
That both of our powers, the West and then the East, had to sort of fight it out, and that's why there was innovation within communism, but also because of the sort of empire that the Soviet Union created, imperialism, colonialism in a sort of sense, whenever they took over all of those countries in the Eastern Bloc, and whenever they'd exert their their economic force on other countries, they were trying to be able to take those resources in order to be able to use them within their own country. People always point to the West and say, well, the West was the biggest imperial force, an imperial force that was oppressive to the peoples of Africa and in North America. But the Soviet Union was a much harsher imperial force, one that did it solely at the behest of the state, not even private enterprise. People always think private enterprise and businesses and corporations are the most evil thing, because they're able to not be able to hold, they're not beholden to any ethical beliefs. But that was the Soviet Union, for sure.
Yeah, it takes out any reason to innovate. I remember there was this funny line. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was talking about how it shows that government doesn't really care and how it's a lot less efficient. And they were like, okay, so what I want you to do is give any government agency you want a call on the phone. And you're probably going to get some sort of automated robot, and then it's going to tell you to hold. And then go ahead and call any sort of private business that relies on the efficiency and the happiness of its customers to survive, and see how quickly they answer the phone. And it for most of the cases, it holds true. It's quite funny. Yeah.
And I don't think these people like Mark Zuckerberg, I don't think they're doing it out of like almost
malice,
evil desire. Like I genuinely think they see a country and they see people who need money and they think, well, we're a rich country, why can't we give these poor people, or not poor, but these lesser fortunate people, right, these less fortunate people money. And that's where their logic ends, and they don't see the unintended consequences that come from that.
Yes, we have the third largest economy in the world. The problem is that we don't get to necessarily call ourselves a rich country whenever we're $1 trillion in debt.
Right. Just look at Greece.
I mean, most of that is to the American people, but
it still continues to grow with the continued government services that just. And some Democrats say, "Oh, we're a growing country. We're going to grow out of it." That doesn't make any sense at all. You don't grow out of debt. If I owe Tyler money, and I continue to gain more money, I still owe Tyler money. Like, I don't know.
Well, okay. Do you want to hear? Well, okay. So I definitely disagree with the Democrats when they're like, we'll eventually pay off the loans via that. But I do see where they're coming from, and the fact that honestly, I would be a fan of it. It's kind of like what I wrote about in that climate change article about how once we get past the whole age demographic crisis, the government, the amount of GDP that we're going to be making is crazy, just due to the fact that how the demographics are actually going to show out. Because as Jeremy was talking about previously in the past episode, our demographic, our age generation, the generation after Generation Y is the largest, or I guess the 00s, right? After them is one of the largest. And once they get into the workforce and they actually start paying into the GDP, into a lot of more social issues, then we might eventually be able to pay off the debt, just because of how much money, especially non-discretionary, or right now most of our spending is non-discretionary. But once we get to like the 50s, if we can make it there, like the 2050s, where a lot of our spending could be non-discretionary, which is going to allow us to pay back that debt, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, the only problem is that
I said that wrong. It's discretionary. I meant. Sorry.
Yeah. It's just the problem is that like we also shouldn't be doing this, regardless of whether or not our money's gonna boon back.
Right.
By then,
if
we're making all that money, that means we can just lower taxes beyond belief, or be able to at that point create more services. We can't create more services now.
Right.
Yeah, I guess you're counting like your chickens before they've hatched. Yeah, but I do see where they're coming from.
Well, yeah, I mean, like some of the most idiotic and unable to be predicted models a lot of times are economic models. So it's not something that we really want to rely on.
Yeah, that's actually that's pretty true. There's that saying that I really like. It's kind of with like economics and statistics and modeling, that sort of stuff. There's 3 types of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. So I always thought that's funny. And actually, talking about statistics, I think de facto segregation kind of sometimes involves.
Nice segue. Also, by the way,
involves a bit of statistical manipulation a lot of these times, at least as far as I've seen. So, Jeremy, you want to give us your take on de facto segregation?
De facto segregation is whenever groups of people, this happens across the world, groups of people, whether it be by religion or race, tend to go to one area and stay away from, whether it be the native population of that country or what have you. This happens in the form in Europe whenever you have self-segregation by Muslims. So you get these big Muslim communities in France and in Germany, which creates a lot of racial tension. Whenever you have these self-segregated communities, this can typically cause a lot of tension in regards to the way in which they're governed, because you get a state in which you have a part of your population which is treated as they should be, and another population which they aren't. It creates the problem that America had with lawful segregation. Separate but equal does not exist. You get separate and unequal in all cases. And so the problem that we're discussing here is de facto segregation, which still, in fact, exists in America, in which we have these large black ghetto slum communities that are separate from the white communities, in which the white communities prosper, have good education, and these black communities that falter, are in poor economic condition, and have educational systems that are beyond the pale bad, beyond what we were talking about before, public education bad. Teachers that mimic the students in the fact that they aren't going to do anything with their lives. So that's the issue here, is that we like to talk.
Is there a way to like fix this, or is this just kind of a thing that naturally happens with humans in a society?
Well, that's the thing. That's the biggest question, because America, we like to tout that, we're able to have this melting pot and we're all able to coexist peacefully, and that does happen. Typically in the cities, actually, people have to coexist with everybody because there's so many people in the cities. But otherwise, there ought to be reforms in place to be able to allow individuals to go to different educational systems, like what Donald Trump wanted to do, which is that voucher system where students will be able to go to the school of their choice. Well, the parents will choose it, obviously, but they won't be stuck in these communities where everyone gets pulled down. That's the problem, is that these people are being misjudged by where they come from, down to the very T, down to the very county, down to the very municipality. These individuals are going into these communities and they can't leave because the economic situation is so bad. Where I come from, there's this community that is called Clairton. This community, Clairton, is in poor economic condition. It used to be a mill town, and it's now filled with a mostly black population that is riddled with crime and drugs. And the mayor is what I would call a slumlord. He buys up houses and he Section 9s them, which in real estate terms means he sort of just turns it over to the government, makes it low income housing. So,
does he profit from that?
Yes.
Okay.
He's a mayor and he owns the town.
Yeah.
So that's what this subject is about, and whether
would you say you're advocating to try to not break up those segregated communities in the sense of breaking families and friends apart, but how do we create more of a melting pot instead of like a segregated salad bowl?
Well, what we have to do
should we keep these gated communities, and is that how does that work better?
Well, I'm not really an advocate for gated communities, because gated communities seem to be to me sort of just another age of like the monarchy, another age of here's me in my castle.
Yeah. Not really
sort of deal.
Not really a country if there's a whole bunch of little, like the feudal system, like the little,
Yeah, like fiefdoms in a sense, sort of way. I don't agree with people being able to, sort of
completely
stay away.
Off.
Stay away from the other people in their community. They have to live with that. But I guess communities can be drawn on lines such as that. But I believe a goal should be for every community is to be able to reach out and help others.
Yeah.
Well, not only to everyone in their community, but to communities across the way. Communities that they're next to, communities in their state have, and then interstate communications and the international communications and working together.
Right.
That's what a goal should be for everybody.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Sorry about the sort of like calling slums and those sort of things as de facto segregation is, I think, at least from the research that I've seen, is a lot of these communities are sort of trapped in a way wherein they okay, so it's almost like a downward spiral, right? So at least how it works in my state is so each county pays taxes, right? And the taxes from that county, pretty much it the percentage from so certain schools, the schools in that county get some of that money, a certain percentage, right, because of the funding for education. And the way that it normally works is that the richer counties pay more in taxes, which means more money for the higher up schools, which means better education, which means more money there eventually, which means higher skill, which means, again, higher taxes or more money from taxes, better education. So, and then, at these lower income areas, which a lot of times are African American or minorities in general, is, they have the same percentage going to schools, but the overall amount is less due to the fact that they're paying less in taxes because they have a lower income, which leads to worse schooling.
So if you're in a bad school system, the only way to get out of that bad school system is to get into a wealthier school system, but you're stuck because the only way to get into a wealthier school district is to be able to live in that district, which you can't because
exactly.
Yeah, that's why I really
needs to be done.
Yeah, that's why I really, really like the school voucher system. I know lots of people are against it, specifically the teachers union, which I have strong opinions on the teachers union.
Which should tell you something. Well, that should tell you something. If the teachers union is against it, it's probably good for the students.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's just because it evens everything out. We no longer have these separated communities in which we have the very rich and sometimes mostly white schools being able to go to these nice, very furnished educational facilities. And then we have the people who are in the slums, the ghettos, who are not able to get really any education, who, they aren't going to get home education but because their home is broken.
Right.
Dad's probably gone. Their mother probably is dealing with more kids than she can deal with, or they have crime problems, drug problems, and there's no way to get it out. And that's why I really do believe that a school voucher system would be something that our nation should strive for, so that way we have an equal school system.
Yeah.
Not only that,
it would add a bit of competition.
Yes, because it would no longer be schools just existing. It would be schools that actually have to vouch for their credibility and sort of say, like, come here.
Exactly.
Right. If that school is performing poorly, the parents aren't going to send their kid there. So that's
exactly. And the more vouchers, and the more vouchers they get, the more state funding they get, which improves the education for those students going there even more, which allows for more busing, so that way even that people from even farther in the state can come there a lot easier. It's just, it's a positive. Right now, it's a downward cycle, and the voucher system, at least from the pure concept of it, depends on how the implementation goes, if it ever happens. It sounds from the pure concept of it would be an upward spiral, a positive spiral.
Yes, and imagine if we could get all these communities back to work. That would be very, very good for consumer spending, for GDP, for overall job growth, unemployment. Yes, for everyone.
Yeah.
That's really the goal here.
But the sad part is, this is very extreme, but I almost feel like the Democratic Party relies on giving these people things like this because that's how they win votes. That's
definitely.
That's insidious and sad. But obviously not all Democrats, but that's a motive I feel of the party.
On the federal level. The federal level Democrats are different than the state level Democrats or local level. That's for sure. And also Democratic voters. Those people are often very, very different. It's the problem that the party itself seems to rely on being able to give these entitlements and rely on the votes that come from it, which in turn doesn't really reflect a lot of it, because a lot of the times the black population, the poor population, even does not show up to vote. That's one problem. Another problem is, how the Democratic Party is a party that really supports union rights to the point at which it might seem counterintuitive to the economy. Usually, union workers vote Republican in national elections, so
Yeah. All right. Well, that's like a whole nother topic. I think that's a good
yes.
place to end it at. You guys have any last words?
Nothing except that soon enough we'll have more things to talk about that is regards Donald Trump. I'm sure in this CNN scandal.
Hopefully, we have some positive policy.
Yeah, and I mean, I think
Trump.
this could be said. I was going to say, yeah, and I think this could be said probably at the end of any of these episodes, but about the issues that we're discussing. But something needs to be done, and it's better sooner than later about all of these issues, because the longer and longer we wait, the worse and worse it gets. And I'm sure I'll say this many more times in these episodes, but it rings true.
Yeah, we can talk about it all we want, but the problem is that we sort of are beholden to the Republican Party, which I will always call the party of incompetency, as they rarely are able to get anything done because they are always divided upon every single line, on one way, shape, or another.
It's too bad the person from our party that got voted in is tweeting WWE memes.
Yes, we can all agree that's a sad thing.
Yeah. I mean, I would be a little more lenient if he was doing that and he just passed a healthcare bill. A good healthcare bill. He was pushing policy, but he's literally on Reddit and Twitter. Okay, well, before I get heated, that's Sensical Politics signing off.
This has been Sensical Politics podcast, where
common sense meets politics. We'll talk to you guys later.